Hey, welcome back. It is a new week. Been a handful of days since we've turned a wrench here on the 57 project, so we're going to jump back off in it and see if we can get knocked out. Game plan's going to be see if we can get the glass taken care of on this thing. We'll see how far we get. I have done a couple things since our last video, so I'll take you for a quick once over, show you what we got there. Picked up some wheels and tires on the cheap over the weekend, so I'll show you what those look like, and then we'll dive off into it. So first off, was able to get the headlight buckets thrown in. No big deal there. Got some of the wiring harness pretty well wrapped up. So since this is an internally regulated alternator, should be able to remove the external regulator bolted to the core support here. Have to figure out what I need to do with this remainder of the wiring harness here. I believe two of these wires, this red and the brown, just plugged together. Snag my ground back there. Get a little blue wire that needs to be eliminated, and then this should just plug back into my horn relay. So we'll do that, and then I'll have to get a little generic GM plug that goes onto the alternator here, and then snip that into my existing harness. Other than that, it should be about as simple as that is. If I'm not mistaken, that should still allow me to use the generator light in here. Won't be able to test that until we get the car up and running, but that's what we're going to do and hope for the best. I think I've got all my brake leaks figured out. Rear line was dripping a little bit, just been slowly snugging it. Afraid to blow the threads out. I think we've got it tightened up where it needs to be. We'll see what happens when we go to bleed the brakes. But for now, I'm going to call it good at that. So I also painted the headlight bezels here. So these little inserts should be black, as well as the mesh here. Did not mask anything off other than just a little bit up here. I think what I'm going to do is go back with probably 800 or 1000 grit sandpaper, kind of like we did the script lettering on the valve cover. See if I can't cut this paint off back down to the shiny chrome. Save a little bit of time for masking all that off, and that should come back with a pretty crisp little finish around these edges. So that's what that turned out like. So here's what we ended up with for wheels and tires. Picked these things up on the cheap on Marketplace. Just a chrome rally style wheel, 15 inch, got like a dog dish style cap. 255s in the front, 275s in the rear. This thing's got a little bit of a rake to it. I'm not sure if it's going to show up on the camera or not. 255s work out perfect in the front, and I like the look of it. The 275s in the rear are just a little bit too wide for me. They are borderline touching the inside of the wheel arch there. Could probably go in and clearance a little bit of that away with a flat disc and be just fine, but kind of gives this thing that big heavy hot rod look, and that's not quite what this car is going to be. If this thing was hopped up, had a big LS in it or something like that, that'd be just fine. But I think what we're going to do is I may see if I can find another set of 255s that the front's got, slam those on in the rear. These tires are like brand new, so maybe I can sell these, kind of offset some of the cost. These things are, I mean, like I said, they are just brand new, but they are just too tight. So other than that, I think I like the look of the wheel. We'll see if this ends up what we go with for wheels and tires. Most likely going to leave it as it is unless I come up with something else on the cheap. For now, we're going to leave the 275s on the rear. Keep on working on other stuff, and if I come across some used tires or something for the rear, we'll go with that. But I think for now, we're just going to jump into it. First, I'm going to work on polishing up these headlight bezels over here, and then we'll see what we move on to next. Okay, so I got one cleaned up, worked out pretty well. Took a little bit longer than I anticipated. Just kind of wanted to show you a comparison of the two. These things aren't quite perfect. They got a little bubbling down here at the bottom, but I don't think it's quite worth replacing at this point, particularly for budget. And it's just nice to keep these original parts. So we'll clean this one up best we can, and then we'll jump to it and throw these on the car quick. Alrighty, so I got the headlight bezel thrown on quick. They're not quite perfect, but certainly will suffice for this project. Decided to save this little welting here. This is the original one. These things are a couple bucks, so just tried to save a little bit of money here and there. Went back through with some black RTV and just kind of cleaned up some of the cracked areas, and I think it'll be just fine. We can always pop those off at a later date if we decide if we want to replace them. Threw the carburetor on quick. Fuel lines are on. Also crawled up under here and hooked up all the rest of the linkages and whatnot for the transmission. A little speedometer cable, a couple other things. So that's tidied up. So we're waiting on a few things to go any further with the engine bay here, so I think we're going to hang tight for where we're at. Going to clean off the bench here, and I think the next game plan is going to be crawl in here and see what we need to do for window felt stuff. So we'll jump to that quick. I'm going to clean up, and then we'll see what we can do to get some of this glass put in. that thing will be one step closer to getting this thing closed up so we can start working on interior. Don't really want to do anything upholstery wise until we kind of get this thing sealed off to get all this crud out of here. So that's kind of where we're at. We'll get this window glass in, and then halfway start scratching our head here in the next, I don't know, couple, 3-4 days on what it's going to take to get the front and rear glass in. Not quite a priority right yet. If I can get these windows in, that'd be great. All right, so I stepped away from the car for a few days to focus on some other stuff, but we are back at it. So I went ahead and threw the driver's side glass in, kind of do a trial run there before I take you to the other side and we start working on it. So I'll quick show you what it looks like. It all fits halfway decent. It's not quite perfect. Not overly happy with the window felt stuff, but I think it'll be just fine. So I'll show you what kind of the issues with it. So it comes boxed like this, all bent up to fit in this little smaller box for packing, but you have to straighten this out to get it to fit the contour of the doors. So here's a piece I've trimmed off. This little metal edging, when you open this bend up, it wants to separate from the felt itself. So I'll show you on the driver door here. You can kind of see through a little bit right here where it's wanted to separate. A better example right here. So it does fine. The windows, the windows retain just like it should be. Just in terms of aesthetics, it'd be nicer if this was, filled out nice and black with some felt in there. Don't think it's going to be an issue on the inside because I've got the garnish moldings that go around here. So I think the inside is going to be fine. However, the outside, got a little bitty spot here that you can kind of see through. I'm going to kind of halfway ignore it for now, but I think what I might do is come back and mask all this off and take a little bitty bit of black RTV and kind of put it in there just so you can not see through there. We'll see if it's something that ends up being of concern or not. But other than that, these guys are in. So this felt just kind of goes through, rides on a track down here, goes up and over and terminates right here. This bar here that retains this vent glass runs down and mounts down here. A little bit of hardware here we had to kind of mess with. And so this is new glass here. To get these out, I've there's a couple rivets that kind of hold this frame in, so I had to drill some of that out. And instead of drilling it all the way out and putting new rivets in, I slammed my new glass in and then just tack welded this back together. So if I need to, I can just drill those spot welds out or those tack welds out. That should be just fine. Need to polish this chrome up a little bit yet, and I need to come up with a piece of weather stripping for this seam right here. So we decided to utilize this old vent window seal. It's actually very good, nice and soft, except for one crack here. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'll clean this up a little bit, and I will brush a tiny bit of black RTV into there, or some windshield urethane or something, and it'll be just fine there. Other than that, it's good and soft, so I think it'll seal just fine. Rear glass is in, no big deal there. This one's a little bit easier. 2 tracks right here. Sits down and it just mounts up here. There's some goofy clips that this thing comes with to mount here into the window or the door frame itself. What I'm doing is going through with a few of these little pan-headed screws. I'm shaving these guys down a little bit, and then I'm coating the top of them with a dab of windshield urethane here, so it's not a hard metal edge. And then I'm kind of going through and epoxying it in a couple spots versus using some of the goofy clips that are half rusted out. The new ones they sent don't work all that well, so that's kind of what we're doing. And then we'll get to putting this quarter glass in after we knock out the other side door. So I think we're going to call the driver's side done. I'm going to go through here and kind of clean up this mess. We'll put all these inner and outer felts in after it's all said and done. So I'm going to clean this up quick, go grab some other parts, and we'll jump to the passenger side. Okay, so we're starting on the passenger side. These 2 channels here are for the rear door, so we're going to set those to the side for a minute. We're going to start on the front door. Went ahead and pulled the old vent glass out, epoxied the new one in with some black urethane. We'll let this harden up, and then we'll go through back here with a knife and trim all that off to clean it up. The old felt here was retained with some rivets or some spot welds, so I had to drill the heads of those off to get that out. And then it also retains this vent window frame here, so we'll need to go back and we're going to spot weld those back into place, stiffen that up. No big deal there. And then this is the new felt channel here that nestles into this track. So a couple different ways to put this in, but what I did for the driver's side was just clean this up. I scuffed up the back of this thing, made it real rough in some areas, and went through with some of this steel stick epoxy, hit it in a handful of spots just to kind of lock it into place. This thing is not going to come out because the windshield, or the glass I should say, retains it into place, so it's not going to go forward or aft. So it's really just to hold this thing from riding up and down. So I think we'll be pretty well good to go with that. I said it worked out just fine for the driver's side here, so that's going to be the game plan for the passenger side. A couple little less than conventional methods, but I think it's going to work just fine. So we'll hop to the welder, pop this in quick, and then we'll carry this over and stick it in the car. Okay, so we're up here on the front door. Got the vent window frame just dropped into place. It's loose, so we can work it back and forth. What we're going to do is we're going to drop the glass in first, and then we'll follow it with the felt. So there's a rubber gasket down here that retains the glass. It's in fair shape, but what I'm going to go through, and I'm going to get a little bit of this black urethane in here to kind of help retain the glass. And then that should help keep it from rattling around. So I'm just going to dab some of this into place. And we'll also use this stuff to kind of help epoxy some of our felt in. This stuff is pretty gross, trying to keep it off of the paint. Okay, so I'm going to go through and drop the glass in. It's kind of a little bit of a back and forth motion to keep from scratching this thing. Drop it in here if we can. All right, so it's down in there, and the little rubber retainer down there is in there with our like urethane. So we need to next twist this vent window frame kind of around to get this in. I'm close, but not quite there. I think we need to drop the glass down a little ways. Okay, so I think I've got that where I want it. It's up and down in this track here, so we should be able to go in and slip the weather stripping around that. So what I'm going to do next is see if I can drop this track in over here. I think I want the glass down for that. This just catches on a stud down here. And then now I should be able to go back through and slip my felt in all the way around. I'm going to get this dropped into place, and then I'll go back, and once it's kind of nestled in, located where I want, I'll peel it out a section at a time, put some epoxy on this, and call it good. So if you can see what I mean on this corner right here, this is wanting to peel away, and I don't know if there's any way around it, which is fine as long as this, metal stays the contour of the door frame itself. If it kinks up, then it kind of looks like garbage, but I think this one will be okay. I still may go back, like I mentioned, and put a little bit of, I don't know, epoxy or something, RTV or something there to kind of hide that spot, but I should be able to pull this guy back up. Something like that looks pretty stinking close. So I think I like that there, so I'm going to drop the glass down. Pull this out. Like I said, this is probably not the correct way stuff is supposed to go in, but this is how I'm doing it. This should just, if we ever had to replace this again, this should just peel out, and then I don't have to worry about any of these goofy little clips or retainers that are going to scratch the glass, or any metal contacting it if I can help it. So I will kind of get this where I want it, and then I'll crank the window all the way up tight against this for a while this urethane sets up. So I think I like that. It's pretty okay out here. This stuff gets absolutely everywhere. If you don't clean it off the second it hits something. I think that looks good, so up we go with the window. We still have to put the fasteners in the vent glass, which is no big deal. So that looks good there. What I am going to do is I've got a vice grip down here on this window crank, and I'm going to put a bungee on it to pull it tight against the car in here. That way, while we're working on everything else, this thing isn't flopping around, and I've got kind of constant pressure going up to keep this weather stripping tight where I want it, so that stuff sets up all nice and firm. Looking good here. I've got 2 screws that retain this up here. The crank to work this vent window, I've got to get this nestled in. A couple fasteners here, and then it sets up with fasteners here, and there's a nut way down at the bottom of this track, so I'm going to grab that hardware and we'll throw that in. Looking pretty okay. All this yet again is going to be cleaned up a little bit, but we can knock that out kind of at a later date. This is what I was talking about. A few little cracks in this weather stripping here, but opted not to buy these guys. I think I can kind of clean them up a little bit. Probably not going to use these little vent windows all that much anyway, but other than that, looking pretty okay, I believe. So I'm going to finish up that felt down there, and I'm going to knock out the back door here. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and jump on this back door. This thing is way simpler. So I went ahead and put a little bit of a sealant down here in this track to retain the glass. So we'll drop it in, do the same thing, and then follow it with the felt after the glass is in place. So, just drop this guy in. I'm going to go ahead and drop these tracks into place. They snap in up top, and then there's a screw down here that retains them. Okay, so I'm going to drop this felt in quick. Should just slide in. Be careful with these corners. Corners are going to be fine, so we'll do the same thing. Glue the top of this thing up and then snap it into place. Okay, now back to this. fiasco with this stuff that sticks to everything. Okay, so I got the passenger side knocked out. I think we worked out pretty okay here. This fits nice and snug here. A little bit better worked out on this side than the driver's side, so good with that. But these are knocked out. Got the outer felts in. We'll wait to put the inner felt in when we get the garnish moldings all painted up. So these things are pretty well set for the time being. Like I said, pretty content with it overall. So now we're going to jump on this rear glass here, clean this up, and I think I'm gonna leave my quarter glasses out in the event that I need to kind of stand here and reach around whatnot to get this pulled in. I'm gonna try to see if I can get this thing slipped in here by myself. We'll see how long that takes, or if this thing ends up in 2 pieces time it's all said and done, but we'll jump to that and go kind of slow with it. All right, so fast forward a little bit, got the rear glass in, tried to record it, but struggled a little bit, so shut the camera off and just got this thing slung in quick. So it actually goes in pretty okay when you have the gasket oriented correctly. So this thing is actually easy to get flipped inside out, which halfway makes sense. You would almost think the bulk of the gasket would be towards the outside, tucked up underneath this stainless and whatnot to keep the water out, but in fact, the larger portion of the gasket goes inside, which kind of holds some of the moldings and whatnot that go in here. But once I got all that correct, this thing just kind of fell into place. So I did go around it, and with some urethane, it got this thing sealed in, hence the reason I got a clamp in a couple spots and some tape. We'll have a little bit of stuff to clean up here. You can kind of see, have not got these things mounted in yet. They're just kind of pushed through. There's a nut that goes on the back side of that, but this thing is in for the time being. We'll put the little spacer clip in here once that's good and set up. But other than that, this thing is slung in, so that is nice to have that done. Now this is the old glass. It's not perfect. It's got a few little scratches on it here and there. I'll be able to pick it up, but certainly wasn't worth replacing. So good to go there. I think we're gonna go ahead and jump on getting these quarter glasses in. They are gonna be pretty simple. The glass just retains the gasket. You kind of epoxy it in. There's a little clip that goes in right here. And the thing is just pretty well set into place. So I'll see how that looks. May need to get a couple clamps in here to kind of hold these things tight while the urethane sets up, but shouldn't be any big deal. So we'll get those dug out, clean those up. We'll see if we can pop those in quick. And then that'll be pretty well wrapped up for the glass, and we can kind of move on to some other stuff, minus the windshield. I guess I'll stick that in here at some point. We'll see what that looks like. In the meantime, while everything was setting up, I went ahead and cleaned this grill bar up and got it thrown on quick. I will need to get some new lenses here, but this thing polished up pretty good since we're trying to save all the money we can. Not quite perfect, but it is certainly just fine. So we will mark that off the list, but I think for now we're gonna jump back to this glass, get that knocked out, and then see where we're at after that. So here's what we're looking like for the quarter glass. These two are the originals. The glass on these, in fact, is in perfect condition. There's not a thing in the world wrong with them. Just needed to replace these gaskets, these seals here. I went to order these from 2 different places. They called back, canceled the order. Apparently the 2 manufacturers that make these things, one of them is shut down indefinitely, and the other one is going through some retooling. So the lead time, or the anticipated lead time for these things, was like 2 years just for the gaskets. And these things are like 80 bucks for the pair, even if you can get them. So I looked around. Could not find anybody that had some old stock laying around, so hopped on eBay and purchased a set of original ones that are in better condition than mine. Gaskets are nice and soft. They've got some old paint on them, but we can try to clean that up. So I think the game plan here is we will see which set cleans up nicer in terms of the glass. We're going to reuse these old seals, try to brush some of this stuff off, get them nice and black again. But unfortunately, that's kind of the game plan for these things. It'd be nice to have some new seals on it, but just can't get a hold of them. I tried looking around to see if I could find any gasket material to make some, and if I had to seam it in the corner or up top here, kind of hidden, it'd be okay, but Probably could be done, but I didn't invest a whole lot of time in doing that. So we're going to make do with what we've got. So like I said, those things should just epoxy in quick. So we will we'll hop to clean these things up, and then we'll stick those in here in a second. Okay, so we got these things cleaned up. They, I think they're gonna be just fine. They're good and soft, cleaned up nice, so should be good to go. We'll be pretty generous with our sealant that's going to surround this thing to kind of get it sealed up against the car. We're gonna go back with the original glass. These things were in a little bit better shape than the glass that came in these gaskets. A couple of them had some scratches on them, so we will slip these guys in quick, and then, like I said, this is a pretty straightforward installation. These things just kind of pop in. They get some sealing around it, so we'll do that next, and then kind of go from there. Okay, so we're going to start on the driver's side quick. This little clip here kind of sits on the back of this guy, kind of retains it into place, so we'll snap this in after the fact. But there's also this kind of this garnish molding, we'll call it. Sits on the reverse side of this, obviously, and that should contact the back of this gasket here, which will hold that in place. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go around here, perimeter this with a good bead of some urethane. We'll get the glass set into place, stick this clip in here, throw the garnish molding on, and then if I need to put some shims or some wedges behind this thing to be sure we're contacting this nice and tight to be sure it's getting sealed off, then we can do that. But we'll just see if we can sling this in quick, and we'll move on to the other side. All right. So the lip kind of holds that little pinch weld there, and then the rest, this is kind of a press fit. So that should be just about it. We will pop this little clip on. Doesn't really do a whole lot, doesn't seem like, but that garnish molding should do okay to retain the rest. And then we'll peel the tape after it's all said and done. That way we've got a good clean line, and that urethane's not all over our paint and everything else. So that's pretty well what that looks like. I think it turned out just fine. We'll go back through here where all this is squeezed out, trim it off with a razor blade once it kind of tacks off and sets up. This molding in here really just retaining the glass, so this thing is can harden up in place. We'll pull these guys back off when after that's all set up here in a couple days. We'll get to paint these things when we're ready to do the interior, but that's pretty well that side. So we're gonna hop to the other side, knock it out quick, and that'll pretty well wrap us up for the glass. So somehow I missed the windshield installation. Thought the camera was rolling. Turned out missed everything. So here's where we're at. This guy's pretty well dropped into place. Same or similar type of install as the rear glass, which we also did not get on camera. But basically this thing just gets surrounded by a gasket. Gasket's got a lip in it that accepts the pinch weld of the car. Kind of get everything centered up, slip a rope into it. I use a paracord. Soap all this thing up, and then I get some pressure on the glass, pull the cord inward, and it kind of opens up the gasket to accept the pinch weld, and it just drops into place. Wasn't too bad. Would have been a little bit easier with two people, but I was able to manage one person, both front and rear glass, and worked out just fine. Just takes a little bit longer. And then also went around with some urethane, particularly in the corners where water would like to pool, so we were sure we don't get any water intrusion into the car. But other than that, we're looking good. Went ahead and threw the rest of the stainless on. So got all that knocked out. Still have to put my little seam clip trim piece here. But other than that, looking okay. So if you recall, the top of this cab was, top of the roof skin here was caved in, which kind of boogered up some of our stainless. Was able to straighten this thing up to the best of my ability. It's not quite perfect, as you can see, but couldn't really see the justification to buy a whole new piece of stainless just for a couple of ripples, particularly on this caliper car. So I think we'll just be just fine there. Also went ahead and threw some of this other trim stuff on. These things shined up pretty nice. Threw the door handles on. I'm not sure how I feel about these things. From a distance, they look just fine, but this is something you're going to grab up, walk up to the car and grab every time you get in it, and they are pretty rough. Just a lot of that old chrome is kind of peeling. Polished on these the best we could, but the more we go, the more chrome is going to get removed, so it's kind of a catch-22 there. We'll see where we're at with budget, kind of as things progress, and if we decide to replace these guys, then we can do so. I think I found them for about $100 all the way around, and they're really easy to throw on, so we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Also went ahead and threw the rest of the door latches on. Spent some time getting all the doors kind of fine-tuned, so I think we're pretty well squared away there. These things close nice and crisp now. All of our door jambs or door gaps are pretty okay. The rear doors seem like they're just a little bit stiffer. We could barely get this door open when we got the car. The hinges were so seized up, and spent a lot of time getting them cleaning them up when we had the hinges out. But they are inevitably just a little bit stiff, but I think we're okay there. So other than that, glass is in all the way around, so we can knock that off the list. That's a big feat. Glad to have that done. So we're looking okay in regards to that. I think that's pretty well going to wrap us up for now. So I think the game plan in the coming days is we're going to tidy up a couple things. Going to go ahead and see about dropping the rest of the body mounts inside the cab here. See if we can get all the kind of the inside stuff knocked off the list. That way we can start thinking about throwing the carpet in and scratching our head on interior stuff. I do have some material upholstery stuff ordered. So here in the coming days, we'll see what that looks like when that stuff arrives. We start picking away at that. So I think it's going to wrap us up for this episode. Stay tuned for future updates. Thanks for watching.